was in class during the fight. Aaron believes the group had targeted him, thought he had something to do with it, and attacked him.
They walked in the back and they asked what was my name.
But before he could respond, he says punches were thrown. We are blurring the video because so far, no one has been charged in the attack.
I was just shocked because I can't believe they came up here to fight me and I ain't had nothing to do with it.
Jackie Jackson is the owner of Fat Burger Cat. Still out on what happened.
How dare them come into my business, destroy, scared these customers off. I was so...
In spite of the attack, the owner says taking Ubers every day to make sure he was safe and on time. Community organizer early saw the attack on social media and felt compelled to step in.
The fact that he stayed working here, the fact that he stayed an employee and didn't let this deter him. I mean, oftentimes, we see in the news, kids don't want to work. Well, Aaron is a prime example of kids do want to work, right? And kids, can be productive. And, Aaron is a prime example of that.
A big surprise was in store for Aaron, one he had never expected.
I heard that you're Uber to work every day. So, we're going to help you with that. We're going to give you a check so that you can get you a new car. It's $4,000.
And that's not all. The Chatham community came out to Fat Burger to support this Black-owned business and show their love to Aaron. 100 customers got free meals today in support of Aaron and Fat Burger Chatham. Early Walker is sponsoring another 100 meals Saturday at 10:30 a.m. The goal is to turn something negative into positive acts of kindness. Samantha Chapman, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Esprit chandrillon ça. Qui faut marcher n'importe Jean yo pas qui la sorti sous.
Oh my God.
La sorti sous pas na qui moi quase. Pas lui a dama com so vai. Não vai com que esprit. Esprit chandrillon ça la sorti sous. Est-ce que le parent peut pas dire
state solution, but less than 24 hours earlier, Benjamin Netanyahu was already throwing cold water on that vote, saying, quote, "We are going to fulfill our promise that there will be no Palestinian state. This place belongs to us." Israel and the Palestinians agreed to the two-state solution framework 32 years ago this week when they signed the Oslo Accords. Of course, the Oslo Accords were already seen as the bare minimum for Palestinians. That's why you're now seeing more countries push to recognize a Palestinian state outright. They know the two-state solution is dead. Rob Malley is back with us as well. Of course, his new book, as we mentioned, Tomorrow is Yesterday, coming out Tuesday, is very relevant to this conversation. So let me just ask you the conclusion that I found in your book, but I want you to articulate. Is the two-state solution dead? Can we finally dispense with the notion that after 32 years, the idea of separating these two people and carving out two separate states for them is the objective of ending this conflict?
So I think really the onus at this point has to be on those who are still defending a two-state solution to say why they think that after, as you say, 30 years of effort, under far more auspicious conditions than exist today on almost every scale, the mutual feelings of the two sides, the level of violence, the settlement construction, what we're hearing in terms of Israeli public opinion, because it's not just Benjamin Netanyahu, it's the entire Knesset, the entire Israeli parliament, except for the Arab-Israeli parties who say no Palestinian state. And we've seen what's happened in Gaza. After all this, people are saying now is the time when we're going to get a two-state solution, when we were incapable of bringing it about during 30 years when, as I say, conditions were better. So that argument, it's not a matter of do we think a two-state solution would have been a good solution. We can make that case one way or the other. It's from us, or Hussein and I, impossible to imagine how that is a realistic outcome when it has failed time and time again. Are we not prepared to learn any lessons from the past?
So talk about what your realistic outcome would be, if not the two-state solution, and how would the Jordanians essentially come on board with this?
So first, even the way you phrase the question, what is a realistic solution other than a two-state solution, makes it sound like the two-state solution is realistic. I think that the point of departure has to be, or should be, to recognize that this quest for a two-state solution has failed. And why did we call the book Tomorrow's Yesterday? Because after all this effort, everything we're seeing now in the region between Israelis and Palestinians, for those who have looked at this for decades, was there before, and I'm talking about way before I was born. I mean, back in '48, mass expulsion of Palestinians, dispossession, liquidation of their leadership. Israelis feeling, for their part, they're feeling attacked by Palestinians with what happened on October 7th. Palestinian leadership that is completely anemic and useless at this point. Isolated acts of Palestinian violence, as we saw in Jerusalem a few days ago. And now Israelis trying to kill any remnant of the Palestinian leadership as far away as in Doha. So everything we're seeing, we saw before. So what did it all amount to? What did this peace process amount to? That has to be the starting point. It amounted to a hill of beans. Now, the question is, what is the alternative? Hussein and I have worked on the two-state solution. Hussein far more than I. He was involved in virtually every discussion on the two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians for over half a century.
Wow.
And so it's not easy for him to say this was all for naught.
Right.
He's reached that conclusion after being in the room with Israelis and Palestinians time and time again. We're not prophets. We failed in the past. I'm not going to say the best solution is a confederation with Jordan, or a one-state solution, or a confederation binational, a loose federation between Israelis and Palestinians. We don't have the answer. But let's at least explore these rather than say there's only one realistic outcome, which is the outcome that has failed, and we exclude consideration of other outcomes that haven't been tried.
Can you speak a bit about what's happening in the West Bank right now and the prospect of further annexation? Where has the U.S. been on the West Bank? And I guess where is this administration now?
So what we're seeing in the West Bank is mini Gaza, right? I mean, and Israelis are pretty clear about it. They're trying to displace populations in Gaza. There have been attacks against refugee camps. There's been daily attacks, settler attacks, but the settler attacks are almost always done with some form of support by the state. And this question of annexation is important, but it's also a little bit of a red herring. Because whether it's formal annexation or incipient annexation, what's been happening for the last several decades since Oslo? Since Oslo was signed, the number of settlers has grown exponentially. And so don't call it formal annexation. That's happened in Jerusalem. For the rest of the West Bank, what's the difference between de facto and de jure? For most Palestinians, they're losing land, they're losing their ability to grow their crops, to live as normal human beings. And so what's happened in the West Bank is the Gazification in that sense, not nowhere near the degree that we're seeing in Gaza, but we're seeing enough that is sending the message to Palestinians that Israelis are trying to kick them out from there as well.
Can I come back to the issue of a one-state solution and what I would argue is a bit of a hypocrisy and double standard in how people talk about it. If you are a Zionist who supports a one-state solution and Jewish supremacy in the entire area from the river to the sea, you're allowed to do that. You have the Israeli prime minister saying we totally control everything from the river to the sea. You've got the former Israeli ambassador, Dave Friedman, who now has an organization called One Jewish State. If you're on the other side and say you want to have a one state with equal rights for all, Jews, Palestinians, everybody in between, you're calling for the end of the Jewish state and Jewish supremacy between the river and the sea. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Is that the only way to read a one state solution? And how do you normalize talking about a one state solution?
So I'd make a couple of points. First, when people say the only realistic solution is a two-state solution, what they really mean is the only solution that preserves a Jewish state, right? I mean, because there are other solutions, binationalism, and for example, one state. It is a solution. It doesn't preserve a Jewish state. And for many people in this country, certainly Jewish Israeli Jews, that's.
Wow.